to NFL Daily, where I guess we just got to be Jets fans now. I'm Gregg Rosenthal, here in the Chris Wesseling podcast studio with my friend Jourdan Rodrigue. It's day 2 of free agency. That means we're on the NFL channel. We're live on YouTube. We're in your ears as a podcast. That's what we love the most.
Audio medium, Gregg.
It is. And look, wasn't as busy as day 1, but right before we're taping, it's 4 p.m. on the West Coast. We had a flurry of signings, but nothing more important than my beloved Geno Smith getting traded to the Jets. What is old is new again. I kind of can't believe this is actually happening.
He wrote back.
Well, they wrote back.
They wrote back,
I guess.
I suppose.
It was always a little confusing. I didn't write.
Who was writing to who? Yeah.
The logic of it wasn't the point. It was a bar. And look, Geno Smith has been underestimated, misunderstood throughout his career. He's coming off the most disappointing season of his career, a very difficult situation. But you know what? As this offseason started, you started to see some of the advanced stats come out, and some of the other teams were interested. Rich Cimini of ESPN reported that Minnesota was in on Geno Smith, and that's the reason that the Jets decided to send a late-round pick swap, just a 7th and a 6th, but also they're going to pay about $3.3 million of his salary. The Raiders are going to pay the rest of it, which I believe is around $16 million. So they're paying a lot of money. But the Jets are paying a little more than they have to, a little more than the minimum, a couple $1 million more than the minimum, and sending in a pick swap because they wanted to get their guy Geno Smith back. If you had told Jets fans in 2016 at the end of his career that they would be getting him back a decade later, I think it would have blown their mind. What do you think?
Well, I just remember how sour some Jets fans were about Geno Smith, and then sour watching him go and thrive in Seattle, and then just the lore of Geno has been a little bit of a painful, sometimes bittersweet one. I think that some can rise above, obviously, and just be happy for the guy when he was succeeding in Seattle. You did see, a couple people still, Jets fans, and there's a lot of them online, and I feel for them because they go through it, seems like every year, and I can't believe I'm saying this, Gregg, but I'm kind of stoked for Geno that he's going to play behind this offensive line compared to what he had just went through last season with the Raiders.
So, yeah, he had a text. Let's put that up on the screen again. That look, Geno Smith, he sent it to Ian Rappaport. I'm a little jealous that Rap Sheet's just on text relationship with Geno. Complete full circle moment back to where it all began. I'm excited to connect with my new teammates and coaches, everyone in the building, as well as a new relationship with the fan base and community. In other statements, he said he spoke with Aaron Glenn. That meant a lot to him, and that helped convince him that this was the right place for him. This is not a popular move for the most part in New York and with the Jets, because it's just like, what are we doing here? But I do think he was the best available player. I wanted different for Geno as a fan. Minnesota was a better option, but I act like a fan more with Geno and different players that you really love to watch over the years than I do, I think, with any team situation. So I've quickly now turned the corner and have convinced myself, to your point, really good offensive line, although they lost Elijah Vera Tucker. We'll get to that in a minute. You got Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, Mason Taylor. Need a little more, frankly. Just need a little more. And you have the Frank Reich offense, which, maybe that could work. I mean, I wasn't going to be too high on the Frank Reich offense, but if you think about how the best version of the Frank Reich offense and really counting on the quarterback to make smart decisions and throwing over the middle of the field, and maybe it doesn't require the biggest arm in the world, like maybe that works for Geno Smith. Like on a football level, I do think this was the best that they were going to do, and they're not paying any money for it, so Jets fans, calm down.
Well, and also none of these things, especially when a veteran is either traded for or signed in free agency, and we'll get to some of those other guys in a minute, and cheaply done, by the way, that's never in a vacuum. Like, it doesn't preclude the Jets from doing something else at the position in the draft. I think when you look at all these moves that they've made, if you look at them in a vacuum, it is a little confusing what they're actually trying to do. Are they trying to compete? Or are they actually just resetting the floor of their roster, which I think they're doing? With Geno Smith, I think that gives them stability at the position, and it doesn't preclude them from going after a quarterback in the draft because people keep forgetting how many freaking picks they have, too.
Good point.
And so packaging those together is something that every competent team does all the time. Are the Jets ready to be competent as they turn their attention to the draft?
The problem is there aren't many great quarterbacks in this draft, so maybe it's packaging picks in the next draft.
Yeah.
I just think of the journey, and I think about my own journey.
Aw.
Look, I wrote an article back in 2015 entitled Making the Leap, number 19, Geno Smith. Little did I know, it took 11 seasons for him to actually get a real shot because, of course, the way his Jets career ended was so sad. First, you had the punch in the locker room, Ike and Impali, and he misses that season. It becomes a magical season for Ryan Fitzpatrick. And then what I think people don't forget was he was still on the team the next year. He's the backup. He then gets to start because I think Fitzpatrick got hurt or benched. I should have checked that. But he tears his ACL immediately. It's a big setback for his season. And now here he is 11 seasons later. And I wanted better for him because this is either going to be incredible or it's going to be terrible. Because it's either going to have a moment where Geno, who's been great at the fourth quarter comebacks, has the MetLife Stadium chanting like, Geno, Geno. And for men of a certain age, Geno Smith fans of a certain age, I mean, that is a magical thought for the Jets fan, for full circle. He's used the word full circle. It was so painful. It's conquering like really tough demons back then. There is another route that this could go because this team, it's a big uphill battle where it'd be a depressing coda to his career and a reminder that things aren't fair always in the NFL. You don't get the storybook. So there'll probably be a little bit of both. I think there'll be some moments, but you're probably not making the playoffs or anything like that. But I have hope. I have hope.
And they could have done a lot worse for a guy who probably will be a bridge to the next guy for them, and probably that guy coming via the draft at some point in the next couple of years. They could have done a lot worse. And you know what? He is, I covered some of those Raiders games for The Athletic this year, Gregg, and it was a disaster immediately, that entire offense, and it was not a fit with Chip Kelly. All of our hopes and expectations were awful. The offensive line was worse than we ever thought possible, and then there was all the infighting that happened there clearly after that led to Pete Carroll's and Son's dismissal. But Geno kind of sat and took it all and was a great spokesman and leader for the team regardless. And so whatever happens, the outlier good, the outlier bad, or probably what we're talking about, which is a little chaotic neutral happening in New Jersey right now, he will wear it well, and he'll be a really good figurehead for that team right now as they're in transition. And
you mentioned the other, shoe to drop at the position. Could be adding a rookie certainly in the middle round, something like that. The reporting in New York is that Carson Wentz is expected to be the backup, which is just a wild
chaotic neutral. It's
a wild quarterback room, but Carson Wentz has the history with Frank Reich. And yes, I did appreciate the members of Geno Nation coming together on Tuesday and saying a lot of what you said about the Raiders. We actually had some fun stats here. 21st in completion percentage over expected out of 41 qualifiers, right in the middle, ahead of a guy that you might have heard of, Patrick Mahomes. 7th in on-target rate.
Here he goes. Here he goes.
According to, I don't even remember where, but 7th in on-target rate. And then this was the one I really liked. FDN Fantasy said that Geno had 7 more interceptions than expected. They have a stat called interception surplus over expected. We're making up new stats for Geno Smith. He was by far the most interceptions that you wouldn't have expected. Like they said, he should have had about 10, and he had 17. So we're doing it.
So depending on how you frame that.
We're back on board. I feel so strange because I'm rooting for Malik Willis to be good. That's the Dolphins, and now I'm Jets fan. It's going to be a short marriage of inconvenience, but the AFC East is where my heart is.
I'm sure they're so happy to have you, Gregg, longtime Patriots fan, Gregg Rosenthal.
Yes. Devin Lloyd is going to the Carolina Panthers.
Yes.
Big news. By the way, I should have mentioned Nahshon Wright going to the Jets as well. Very cheap, 1 year, up to $5 million contract for the cornerback who had all those interceptions. He had 5 last year for the Jets. And, for the Bears, that's 5 more than the Jets had last year. I have a feeling the actual contract is much less than up to. Let's go to Devin Lloyd with the Panthers. This happened on Monday night. We're going to do a mix of Monday night and Tuesday news. 3 years, $45 million, $25 million guaranteed. Was a top 10 player on my overall top 101 board, my top linebacker. The NFL kind of disagreed with my evaluation in terms of finances. In terms of Devin Lloyd, he gets a very similar contract to what Nakobe Dean and Quay Walker got in Vegas, and not much more than a couple of the other guys in the middle tier of the market that we'll get to. I actually think they kind of set the floor for him to get this money financially, but I think it's a great fit with the Panthers, a fit that you saw coming.
Yes, and one that I really hoped would work out, not just because I predicted it in our free agency matchmaking.
You're on the board.
I'm on the board.
It's a defensive battle. We each have one pick right.
And I'm so far winning what we deemed to be the tiebreaker, which is the height, height advantage.
I did not agree to that.
I am very much taller than yourself and Colleen Wolfe. So I'm so far in the lead in that, and also in terms of like the closeness to the atmosphere and all of that. So I love this because what I mentioned even a couple weeks when we came out of the combine, I just got this sense from Panthers brass, from Dan Morgan, especially a famous, storied former linebacker himself, that he's just been holding himself back while they've attended to other areas of their team build from really going out and getting a core inside linebacker, someone who he really takes pride in evaluating, someone who he can bring in and really set the tone right up the middle of that defense, where they've had a lot of success with the perimeter corners, especially. They're adding to their perimeter pass rush. They already have Derek Brown in the middle up front, but the back end of that front seven and then the back end of that secondary needs a field marshal, essentially. Devin Lloyd is that person, is that player, and I just think that he's such a fit here and a fit in that defense because they don't ask their inside linebackers to do everything. They ask more of their safeties often and then their slot players than their inside linebacker, but they will ask him to be really active in the pass in terms of disrupting pass plays and obviously stout against the run, but because they play the front structure that they do, I think you're going to see a lot more activity from him in the pass game.
And I couldn't help, and I know this isn't how these things work, but think of former, PFF employee Devin Lloyd now working in the as part of the Panthers front office, and I'm thinking like they had him as the number 4.
Eric Eager.
Eric Eager.
You just give me Devin Lloyd and Eric Eager. I was like, PFF employee Devin Lloyd. Where is he going with this?
Devin Lloyd, of course, a favorite of PFF.
Yes.
A favorite maybe of Eric Eager's. A top 5 linebacker according to PFF, and I really thought he was dynamic. I thought he improved the year before, and the money, like I said, I think it ends up being a bargain.
Yeah.
Maybe he's a little more. I don't think he's more boomer bust than those other linebackers. So I think it's a really good value.
Even if you don't get the production he had last year, I mean, I think it's so cool for him in general. He bet on himself. They weren't initially gonna pick up the option on him, and then he went out and he proved to everybody what he was capable of. I think even if you get somewhere in the middle of this, or you get slightly less production, if we can look at that season possibly as an outlier, which realists will do, especially with defense, which fluctuates so much year over year, like you still are very, very happy with the traits, with how he fits in this defense, with the leadership, and also with, you have to feel some of that success as a player. You have to taste what that feels like, and he definitely did last season.
They also cut A'Shawn Robinson there, and I think it'll be positioned as like the Panthers are going all in. Huge money on Jalen Phillips, big money on Devin Lloyd. To me, Jalen Phillips is the risk. Jalen Phillips is just a massive injury risk and a high ceiling player, but also, for $30 million a year, that's up there with the very best of the best. To me, that is taking a big swing. Devin Lloyd is just good business. Let's go to the Patriots. We'll see if you think they did good business. Romeo Doubs is in the building. Hilariously, his contract was reported by 4 different outlets as 4 totally different contracts. But we believe, no matter what mergers are happening, in Ian Rappaport, and he's got it at 4 years, $70 million. We'll see kind of what the guarantees are, and it's probably more about the first 2 years. But good money for Romeo Doubs, but not crazy. Definitely not more than you would expect. I mean, less than Wan'Dale Robinson got, for instance. And they also gave Elijah Vera Tucker $21 million guaranteed on a 3-year, $42 million contract. Interesting wide receiver group they got going there. You got rid of Diggs, but you still have Kayshon Boutte, who's a real guy. Matt Collins, who's kind of that perfect, as you would say, dig you out phrasing, wide receiver. Kyle Williams, who's another fun little deep threat. Just a lot of guys there. And yet, Cameron Wolfe from the NFL Network says don't rule out A.J. Brown still, that they still might be in that mix. What did you think about how Doubs fits in with this group?
I love this fit. It kind of goes back to a conversation you and I had a couple of days ago. Was it days or weeks? At some time ago in the spring, where a team that really is looking for a younger version of a player they already had will depend on some of the traits that older player showcased for them within their system in order to understand maybe how to correctly identify that younger player. And Romeo Doubs is absolutely going to slot in right where Stefon Diggs left off. He can really work the intermediate areas of the field. He is really, really strong through traffic. He has a great catch radius, and he can be a red zone threat as well. And he's just really precise and very sharp in his route running and in his movements. And so I just think that he immediately fits this offense exactly in the same way that Stefon Diggs did, just a younger version.
Yeah, much younger. And I love that point about he can work inside and out, and he's strong, like great hands. It's one thing I think they look for in receivers.
Yeah.
I said it all last year. Like, this is a great pass-catching receiving group. It's not a great separation receiving group, but at the catch point, it's a group of guys with really good hands. Efton Chisholm, let's throw him into the mix too. So I really like Doubs being an addition here, and they're paying him at a level that to me does not smack of like super free agent, inflation. If the Packers had given him this contract, you would have thought like, okay, that makes sense. Vera Tucker is a much bigger risk because he's missed more than half the games of his NFL career. But 2 of those were to biceps and triceps injuries, which just seem fluky in a way. I don't know. They both happened, but they're not injuries that you think like are going to happen again. And they're also injuries that, unlike like a knee or a hamstring and stuff, they don't necessarily cause any long-term damage. Overall, like, this is a boom or bust contract if there ever was one. He was Brandon Thorne's #1 offensive lineman available in free agency. He was in my top 15 overall. I think if you just look at his average game played in the NFL, and he's played at right tackle and he's played at guard, which is where I think the Patriots will start him, but he'll be an option if Morgan Moses, he'll be an option at tackle too. If you looked at his average game, he's the best offensive lineman I think available in free agency. But a huge risk because of the injuries, and it sounded like the Jets were in on him, maybe giving him as much or more money, and he just wanted out of there because like he just wanted a fresh start where the vibes would be different.
Vibes refresh. Yeah. The Patriots had to do something, even if it was a risky swing. It's a big swing if it works out for them, and they had to do something with their offensive line. That is the most recent memory that every fan, every coach, every player on that team has, is what happened to that offensive line in the Super Bowl. They had to do something to address this.
And because he plays multiple positions, like he could fill different spots depending on what you need. Right now, I think he's probably at left guard where Jared Wilson was, and he's moving to center. You have Mike Owenu at right guard. Vera Tucker's best position probably was right guard, so that's, you're moving him into different positions, but who knows? Maybe he'll take over for Will Campbell at some point. Either way, I love it. I love it for them, and I love it for him. It made me really happy when I saw the contract terms. I thought he might have to take a below-market, prove-it deal coming off the injury, but he didn't. He really got great guard money, and I think the Patriots decided to, give him all that money thinking if he actually hits, it's going to be a great value. Fun day, really a solid, I think, free agency period so far for the Patriots. Let's take a quick break. The rest of the signings, they were intriguing. I wouldn't say as big names. We also, by the way, should have mentioned, have some big questions we're going to ask about the big names that I still think are going to go off the board later this week. back on NFL Daily. Riq Woolen back in the mix with a big-time team. The Philadelphia Eagles, those dirty dogs, are on the board. They were one of the few teams that had yet to sign an outside free agent yet. Have the Broncos? I don't think they have. The Riq Woolen signing to the Eagles is for $15 million max contract. Not seeing a lot of details on the other reporting. I'm guessing it's significantly less than $15 million. Interesting that the market wasn't there for Riq Woolen like it was for a lot of lesser-known cornerbacks, like let's say a Cordell Flott.
Alontae Taylor. I mean, we know him, but like.
I mean, hell, he got more money than any free agent cornerback in history. I'm even thinking of who was it? Eric Stokes got 3 for $30. Benjamin St. Juste had a similar type of contract to Riq Woolen, but what a potential fit as the outside cornerback, kind of filling that Adoree Jackson role opposite Quinyon Mitchell.
Yes, this is something that we want a fan cam. Like I extrapolate just him, and also maybe one on Vic Fangio up in the booth. And I want to watch this all season. I just want that streaming live all season, because this is so fascinating to me. When I see reports come out of a signing of a really talented player with huge upside, and obviously he's been a little streaky and all of that, but huge upside here, and it's framed as worth up to $15 million. I'm thinking, what red flags? That's a red flag wrapped in a contract right there.
I think that his up and down career, look, it was sometimes great for Seattle. It was sometimes not as great. But this season was really good.
Yeah.
Like, his numbers in terms of yards per target, yards per, snap on the field are awesome. And his awesome plays are really good. I think maybe people were a little worried about the fact that Josh Jobe got ahead of him, that, he was a Mike McDonald product, but he was at his best with Pete Carroll, and I think this is a great bet on himself. So I think this is a great move by the Eagles, who believe that they can coach him up, and they are all about, size, weight, speed. At that, they feel
he's a perfect fit traits-wise for them.
Right, they can
100%.
get the most out of him, and I think they probably, without knowing anything, maybe there's a very real chance they had a 2 or 3 year offer for him, and he was like, hey, I want to do that. I'm ready to do this. Let's do it for 1 year. I'm going to bet on myself, get to free agency, because I'm going to show that I'm a great cornerback. And it's a great situation where he is going to get targeted.
He's going to see the ball a lot. Yeah, a lot.
And, man, the Eagles have been so quiet. They struck out on Jalen Phillips. I think this is going to be a sneaky, really good move.
Well, I think they've been so quiet because they're furiously working behind the scenes to try to get an A.J. Brown trade happening.
I think that's happening. I think they're going to have, and they've watched a lot of people go out the door, right? Jalen Phillips and Nakobe Dean and Reed Blankenship, and a lot of people are leaving. I still think they're going to be very active with a lot of changes coming up. Will they get into the linebacker market? Probably not, because of who they drafted last year. The off-ball linebacker market did take off right before we started taping. Caden Ellis to the Saints, 3 years, $33 million, $23 million guaranteed. And then Leo Chanel soon after that to the Commanders. And I am guessing, without any knowledge, that these things are connected, because to me they're filling very similar roles in a defense. And then once one guy was off the board, they were both, top 50 players on my list. They're linebackers who really rush the passer well. And once Ellis was off the board, I think Chanel then had his home with the Commanders. What do you think about Caden Ellis returning to where it all started? Now, this is just another warm bath of a Saints move. I'm loving what the Saints are putting down.
I know. I am very, very cautiously optimistic about what the Saints are doing this free agency. Did you see today there were reports out of New Orleans that actually one of their contract acquisitions has no void years attached to it?
I have a feeling this doesn't either. $23
That's
million.
a new day for the Saints. That's incredible.
It's awesome. And Caden Ellis, for people who forgot, he was awesome for the Saints. It was a different defense, but obviously I think Kellen Moore and the Saints, there's a lot of crossover between them and the Falcons in terms of staff and what the Falcons were doing defensively. And I think Caden Ellis steps in there and really helps out.
This defensive scheme, particularly the way that Brandon Staley likes to run it, they use this type of player as sort of this hybrid pass rusher, but also as a hook player who can drop into coverage and who will play in a lot of different positions. And I can definitely see Caden Ellis being one of those players and just kind of beefing up and adding not just to their off-ball linebacker room, but also like their pass rush as well, and getting just a little bit more dynamism, versatility, different looks, different ways you can overload your fronts, even if you're playing with a light front the way that Brandon Staley likes to do. I just think this is going to be really interesting.
You mentioned how they liked a fourth-round pick from a year ago, Danny
Yeah,
Stutzman.
They love that guy.
Pete Warner has been a little disappointing since he signed a big contract, but ultimately I think you need 3 linebackers, and so I expect Pete Warner to stay. Leo Chanel was a fascinating free agent to me in general. Just an explosive, awesome pass rusher and just unique skill set guy who sometimes would be the spy on Lamar Jackson for the Chiefs, but never got over 500 snaps. And he goes to a Durante Jones, Dan Quinn defense for the Commanders. They've been very active. I think that'll be a fun pairing. Let's go to the Texans, who signed Braden Smith, 2 years, $20 million for the ex-Indianapolis Colts. And we're just keep ticking these players off. We might get to breaking this down later, Jourdan, but only 3 of my top 30 players originally are still available. And here's 3 more we just mentioned from my top 50. There's not many players. It happened faster than ever. And Braden Smith I had right around 50, thinking he'd be a right tackle. I think he might be a guard with the Texans.
Yeah.
That's what he played in college. I think it's similar where maybe they'll just figure it out as they go. But Texans, we wanted them to fix their offensive line. They said goodbye to Titus Howard. They bring in Braden Smith.
Not to be that guy, but like shorter arms, so play him at guard.
Okay, that's what people thought in terms of.
You mentioned another player that's been in the news about that earlier, so not to salt in the wound on that one there.
Will
Gregg.
Campbell, you're referring to,
Yeah.
and Braden Smith's an interesting case because they drafted him in Indianapolis like a guard, and then they had to use him at right tackle, and then it just kept working out so well. He was there for most of a decade.
Well, he's like better with his zone blocking, and so I think, and that's obviously, Nick Caley is going to run a lot of these zone concepts and everything. So I do think his movement skills, even without like recent experience at the guard position because of necessity, I think it's absolutely a fit because you're going to be asked to move like a tackle in some of your run sets anyway.
They're making progress. The Browns are back on the offensive line board. We've just been tracking this as each signing comes in. They came into the offseason with no starters on the offensive line, and then each day they just tick off another one, and this time it's Elton Jenkins, the former Packer, who was just officially released and then signed right away. $20 million guaranteed, 2 years, $24 million. He's been a Pro Bowl. He's been an alternate All-Pro. He's played at center. He's played at guard. He's played at tackle. I just talked to Brian Baldinger over in the newsroom about him. He thought it's a really good signing. I do as well. The Browns have now ticked off 4 starting spots because they also re-signed Tevin Jenkins, who played pretty well for them as a fill-in guard last year. And so we'll see how it works. But on paper, actually, I like what they've done on the offensive line. Let's go to the Lions, who decided to replace David Montgomery with an interesting, stylistic match. Isiah Pacheco, the former Chief, is a member of the Lions. What do you think?
I can't quite see how this is gonna all shake out, other than the fact that I think he's talented. But it kind of hints to maybe they're changing a little bit about how they want to run the ball.
Isn't he kind of like a Montgomery, basically? He's
I
like
guess
that short yardage.
Yeah, he is. But I also think that if they were gonna still move on from David Montgomery, I mean Pacheco is obviously built similarly and has that physicality. But I always saw him as he's gonna move a lot and get basically either at or less than the yards that you need him to get, but there's going to be a lot of energy and effort put into it, and then he's great in the screen game.
Well, there was pre-injury Pacheco, who was an intriguing young player,
Yes.
and then there were post-injury Pacheco, who to me has been a replacement level player who I wasn't sure was going to have a future in the league. So to me, like, it's not a lock that he makes the Lions. I haven't even seen the contract, but he's an interesting name. You never know. Sometimes you just got to be a year or two away from that injury to play your best. The Giants have signed Gregg Newsome at cornerback for $10 million. Like I said, like Gregg Newsome is getting the same amount of money as Reek Willen that we talked about before. They also brought back Micah McFadden. And while we're talking Chiefs, we didn't hit that Alohi Gilman, 3 years, $24 million for the safety, $15 million guaranteed last night. They also give Tyquan Thornton 2 years, $11 million. How about Tyquan Thornton turning his career around as kind of like a third, fourth receiver for the Chiefs? My big takeaway here is that Alohi Gilman for Odafe Owe trade, where both players were kind of on the outs. Alohi Gilman wasn't even playing that much for the Chargers. Made both of those players so much money. I can't remember a trade like that where two guys whose stock was sinking get traded for each other, 1 for 1, and then 3 months later, they're making huge money. So bully to them.
Yeah, well, it's a confluence of factors. One, it's great when it is very clear that you're wanted by a good football team, and then which is what happened with both of these players. And then also the Chiefs have a lot of work to do in their secondary. So I like this signing because, again, he's kind of one of those reset guys. I expect them to hammer the draft all throughout their secondary, but also he is one of those like reset players where you're just like, okay, what's our baseline here? We need to invest in a baseline and then build around from there with young players.
I like him too, and I always defer to Steve Spagnuolo. I'm sure Gilman would not be going there if Spagnuolo didn't approve it. But the whole buy low, sell high thing, like they're buying really high on a guy. If he had hit free agency a little while ago, might be like 1 year, $3 million. I don't know what the Chiefs are doing outside of that Kenneth Walker move. Let's take a quick break. We have a little bit more news to get to, and then we're going to talk about some questions we are asking going into day 3 of free agency, including Brian Thomas Jr., A.J. Brown, Kyler Murray, who's going to get Trey Hendrickson. There's still some big names out here. We're going to take a break here. If you're on YouTube, we'll be back in just a second. on NFL Daily, Audible during the break. Let's just get to the questions we're still asking about free agency, and we'll hit a bit of the lighter news at the end of the show. What's up with Kyler? Well, here we are in a world where, like I said, there's only 3 of my top 30 players overall available now. And that was true basically after 12 hours, which is just crazy.
Congrats,
Kyler's
Gregg.
The highest ranked. Yeah, they're going off the list. There's still about like 45 total from the 101. And there's like 20 from the top 50. A lot of guys 30 to 50. But why hasn't the Kyler Murray move happened? And do we just assume it's Minnesota?
To the latter, I do think that's the strongest candidate right now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it sometimes there's just no point in smoke screening any of this. Sometimes the most obvious answer to the question is the correct one. Minnesota needs a veteran quarterback. They kicked the tires on a couple of other veteran quarterback options as free agency began. They are probably going to go with one of the cheapest ones with such a high ceiling in Kyler Murray. It just feels too obvious to not happen.
And there was a report, or a couple of them, different people said this, that Kyler and his age, they're like doing things the right way, because technically the Cardinals haven't released him. They haven't even announced their release. And someone pointed out to me, Monty Ossenfort and the Cardinals actually did get in trouble previously for tampering, and so they haven't sent anything out, and so maybe they all are waiting. It's just so quiet. There's also no other spots. Like, that is the one place where there's a starting job just open. And no matter what they think about J.J. McCarthy, they've, made it clear publicly that that job is open, that J.J. McCarthy will be competing for it. But, it's like a marriage. Or like a girlfriend. Once you're considering other options, it's kind of like, it's probably not going to end that well for you. You know what I mean?
You know what?
Maybe not a marriage. Maybe like a, relationship.
Sadly, I do know what you mean, Gregg. If we want to,
I'm just saying, you're talking about other potential quarterbacks at a podium, saying like.
Listen, here's the thing.
It's not a great sign.
Here's the thing. I do think that there are a lot of people in that Minnesota Vikings building. I don't just think this. I know this. There are a lot of people in the Vikings building that are not ready to give up on the J.J. McCarthy experience. They think that he's just so young that the injuries, can mess with a young player's head at times, and just really want to see who he becomes after all of this, right? And I think that that's important. You're led by the head coach who has basically preached patience in developing quarterbacks, has become the face of those comments that he made a couple of years ago in that regard. And the other thing is on the Kyler situation, I really think that some of this might actually be Kyler wants to go see what the best fit for him will be.
That's what I'm saying.
Too. Like, I really think that there are going to be multiple teams who will also say, hey, would you like to come be a backup for us for a year, maybe sign a 2-year deal or even a 1-year deal, rehab your sort of like mental here, get clear of the mess that ended up becoming in Arizona, make sure that your body's healthy. He dealt with some injuries last year, quote unquote, as well, that the team was cagey about, is why I say that. And really understand, like, what's the best launch point for me moving forward? Is it starting somewhere right now? Or is it taking my time, being wooed a little bit, seeing what the best, like, overall holistic fit for me in my next chapter of my career as he continues, like we all do, God willing, to get older, and to really understand what that will look like, and not just what it looks like this year, but what it looks like after this year.
Well, the two teams that stand out there are the Rams and the Chiefs. The Chiefs would be a spicy place for him to go to quarterback school with Andy Reid. Don't know if there's interest there from either side. And then the Rams, you kind of laid it out as a potential, option if, just to go through the McVay, quarterback school. We got to move on, though. The interesting thing here is there are other quarterbacks out there. Like Kirk Cousins is still sitting out there. We are waiting to find out about Aaron Rodgers. I do think everyone assumes he's just going back to the Steelers. So Cousins might be the guy who's kind of left without a spot if Kyler ends up going to the Vikings. Maybe Cousins is the backup option for the Vikings. Let's talk about the wide receiver market. A.J. Brown, I mentioned earlier, could have a Patriots market still. There was some reporting that basically the Patriots were the only team maybe showing significant interest, and it sounded like they're not offering a first. I just don't think it makes sense for the Eagles to trade him at 70 cents on the dollar. On the other hand, the fact that we're hearing so much about it indicates to me like they're certainly willing to make it happen for the right price. And when that happens, usually it goes down. They could also wait it out until after July 1st, June 1st, and then it helps their cap a little more if they trade him in camp. And so they're in no big hurry. What do you think about A.J. Brown? And then I'll even throw in Brian Thomas Jr. here as like the trade market. Even though today was quiet in terms of free agency, the trade market often picks up when the new league year starts, which is on Wednesday. So I wouldn't be surprised if we get 3 or 4 woozy bangers between Wednesday to Friday. Just some fun, surprising trades, and these are 2 possibilities, Brian Thomas Jr. and A.J. Brown.
I'll start with A.J. Brown because this one is fascinating to me. It's the worst kept secret in the world. It's not really a secret at this point that the Eagles are trying very, very hard to trade him. They feel it seems clear to me that they feel they must move on from him or must move him at some point before I say that now they're probably giving themselves a longer runway, the trade deadline, let's say next year, which feels like a long time, but really isn't if you think about, how quickly that comes up in the context of a season. This is interesting because it feels to me the amount of chatter we heard about this and the amount of teams that were being connected via sources to this possibly happening all felt like the Eagles trying to manufacture a bidding war or trying to find a way, as Howie Roseman is so good at doing, to basically increase what the perception of the price is for a player. And maybe it's possible they're asking for too much in this initial wave, and they might have to back down off of some of what they might be asking for with A.J. Brown. If the Patriots...
I think it's just I think if they could get a first for him, I think he'd already have been gone. So my guess is no one's given up a first for him.
I mean, even if it's a first and another pick, I feel like that is they're going to have to back off of whatever they were asking these teams for. And in terms of Brian Thomas Jr., it is interesting the dueling reports, I guess, that we're getting out of this, where we see that they're trying to find the best possible fit for him in this new scheme. They're moving him around, bringing other players in to take on a role that he previously had played. All of this during the regular season, the Jaguars sort of like fairy tale season and postseason that they had. Well, now we're reporting today, and ESPN's Adam Schefter kind of came out and said, hey, I don't know where this is coming from. Like, this isn't something that they're interested in doing. And I know we both have like our thoughts on how real any of this could be, but I always do laugh because insiders, they know so much that they still don't report. And I feel like he knows exactly where this is coming from. Adam. And so him saying that, it immediately puts my flag up, and I just I'm tickled by it, because I'm like, wait, if you're saying I don't know where this is coming from, I feel like you know exactly where this is coming from, and that's why you're saying I don't know where this is coming from. It's kind of one of those things that...
Well, local reporters in New York specifically, like the Jets, were saying, and the Giants actually, were saying that they heard Brian Thomas Jr. is very much available. And hearing local reports say one thing...
And local reporters in Jacksonville say he's very much not available.
Right.
So...
And the national reporters are saying, we don't think he's available. So everyone has different self-interest. My theory, without knowing anything, would be, look, maybe the player is interested in going. Maybe the team would let him go for the right price, but since the price is so far off at this point, they're trying to shut it down and keep that relationship and trying to leverage it. But I don't think those reports come out of nowhere. So if there's reporters in certain markets that believe that he's available, my sense is that someone's trying to drum up that market, whether it's the Jaguars or it's Brian Thomas Jr.'s agent, and I would love to see that. Before we take a break, I just want to say, like, I'm taking Brian Thomas Jr. every day of the week over A.J. Brown right now. I mean, not just because of the contract, although that's part of it.
The age is a factor.
You're going to have to pay Brian Thomas Jr. because you cannot find that speed elsewhere. All the teams, including the Patriots, that were in on Alec Pierce, I'd rather have Brian Thomas Jr. than Alec Pierce, too. As much as I love Alec Pierce, they're in the same ballpark, but that is a young guy who moves unlike many people in the NFL. And the fact that it's all just being sprinkled out there at all tells me it could be happening. I think it will happen, actually. I think it's more likely to happen than A.J. Brown. That's just a wild guess. Let's take a break, and we'll come back. We'll talk a little bit about Trey Hendrickson on the other side. Trey Hendrickson's wanted to be a free agent for a long time, and I hate for him that it's not going how he wanted to. Jonathan Jones of CBS reported that Trey Hendrickson wants about $10 million more per year than the offers that he's getting, which is wild. If I had to guess, I think the Danielle Hunter 1 year, $40 million extension plus the Jalen Phillips $30 million contract combined to create this situation. And if there really was a $10 million gap between what he wants and what he's being offered, I would guess, and I don't know if this is all true, that like he wants about 35 and he's getting offered about 25. Or he wants about 30 and he's getting offered about 20, somewhere in there, 32, 25. That doesn't surprise me. Like, I think he is about a 20 to $25 million player because he's turning 32 and he's coming off of a serious injury. I understand when he looks at the other players like Odafe Owe and Jalen Phillips and thinks like, I should be making more money than them, but that's just not how it works sometimes.
6 years older than Jalen Phillips.
Right. You know, without the devastating, injury history that Phillips has. But he does have an injury that he's coming off of, which is a concern. There was a report that the Bills could be getting in on the Trey Hendrickson market, that they've reached out. Where would you like him to go? Where do you think he could land?
I want him to go to the Chicago Bears, but they will not do it at that price, and I wonder if they would even have like a big circle with an X drawn through any player acquisition that is a player over 30 at a premier position. Because some teams just do. Some teams just will not spend risky contracts or big money or even media money on players at premier positions, which pass rusher is, at a certain time in their career. And sometimes we get really cool outliers, like Danielle Hunter is still going. And, I just think that even with the cool outliers that we get, teams do stick to a lot of these processes. And I think that's a huge reason why he's not seeing what he wants is not the ability or the potential. I think a lot of teams would be happy to have him, but it's the age thing.
Also,
unfortunately.
This sounds horrible, but it's Trey Hendrickson. It's not Max Crosby or Myles Garrett. Trey Hendrickson's not that player. I know he had a great season 2 years ago, but if you just look at him on a play-to-play, season-to-season basis, he's absolutely like a top 10, top 8 edge rusher at his best, but he's not those guys, and now he's older. I think the Cowboys would be really interested. We always hear, Cowboys are in the mix. The Bears obviously would be fun. The Commanders have kind of filled that hole. The Bills, I think the Bucks, who I had him in our matchmaker game, still make the most sense for him, and so he's going to get paid. I think he'll end up on a good team if he wants to be on a good team, if he wants to prioritize that. He's not going to get everything that he wants, but he's kind of the biggest free agency domino to fall in the next couple of days. We have one more break on this show here on YouTube and NFL channel, and then we're just honking after that. We'll be back in a second. wrapping up here, if you're watching us on the NFL channel and on YouTube, with just some odds and ends. I always like the day after the crazy day because then you find out these little nuggets. I thought it was funny. I don't know, funny's maybe mean, to hear that Nakobe Dean got as much or more money offered to him by the Cowboys, and he turned that down.
Oh, just because to ruin your game, Gregg.
For the Raiders. That's true. I had Nakobe Dean to the Cowboys. He just said he just like kind of went with his gut. I think he played with Quay Walker before.
Yeah.
He thought the locker room. But how about the Cowboys getting spurned for the Raiders in a big spot?
Man, that's a real blow to the brand, you know? That's a real blow to the
It kind of is. And why not just throw in, if you're that far along, make it so that the money isn't the same. Like it was like, oh, they're paying a little more. How about just throwing an extra $3 million? Speaking of money, Mike Evans only got $16 million guaranteed on his contract from the 49ers. That was one of those where the real money was not as good as we thought. 2 years, $28 million. Pretty fascinating, and supports a theory I had that he just got on the phone with Kyle Shanahan, who's a wide receiver guy, and Kyle Shanahan's vision for him, as you said, as the X in that beautiful offense was just like, I got to try something new instead of trying my 6 different offensive coordinator under Todd Bowles, in the last 7 years or whatever, because the money's not that good.
Yeah, and he's already a future Hall of Famer in my opinion, but also if you go to San Francisco, big if, there's a lot that has to happen between here and now. If you go to San Francisco and you win a championship as a receiver, as a number 1 receiver, you are now etched in a very specific and particular piece of lore in football history.
You just got to stay healthy, away from that substation. I thought it was interesting that Cam Wolfe of NFL Network said, look, even when Michael Penix is back, it's an open competition for the Falcons' starting quarterback job. That Tua Tagovailoa is going to have a head start. Everything you hear is that the staff there in Atlanta is not necessarily in on Michael Penix, I feel bad for him, but that's what happens when regimes change. And then finally, I thought it was cool. Stephen Holder of ESPN said the new vision is Alec Pierce, 8 to 10 targets a game. So not just more money, more action for Alec Pierce. That was fun. Day 2 of free agency. We will be back again live on YouTube on the NFL channel tomorrow, 4 p.m. Pacific.